What were those 4 missing minutes when the world went silent, and why did Margaret never speak of them again? The basement smells of wet earth and fear. Margaret's hands shake as she clutches her 2-year-old son Tommy against her chest, his small fingers twisted in the fabric of her house dress. Above them, the world is ending. A freight train made of wind and debris tears through everything they've ever known. The single light bulb hanging from the basement ceiling flickers, casting dancing shadows on the concrete walls where spider webs catch the amber glow. Her breath comes in short, desperate gasps. She can hear her husband Frank's voice somewhere in the darkness, calling for their daughter Mary, but the sound feels distant, muffled by the deafening roar overhead. This is April 9th, 1955, 7:47 p.m., the moment when everything breaks. But to understand this moment, to truly feel the weight of what's happening in this musty basement in Moore, Oklahoma, you have to go back 6 hours earlier. The morning had started like any other morning in 1955. Margaret stood at her kitchen window, watching the sunrise paint the endless Oklahoma plains in shades of gold and amber. The radio was playing Perry Como's Papa Loves Mambo, and she hummed along while scrambling eggs for breakfast. Frank sat at the small Formica table, his work clothes already dusty from yesterday's shift, reading the Daily Oklahoman and sipping coffee from his favorite mug, the blue one with a chip on the handle that she kept meaning to throw away but never could. "Storm system moving in from the west," he said, not looking up from the weather section. "Says here it might get pretty rough tonight." Margaret glanced out the window again. The sky was clear, impossibly blue, the kind of spring morning that made you believe in fresh starts and new beginnings. "Rough how?" she asked, though her attention was more on Tommy, who was attempting to feed scrambled eggs to their tabby cat, Whiskers. "Oh, you know, thunder, maybe some hail." Frank folded the paper and stood, reaching for his lunch pail on the counter. "Nothing we haven't seen before, nothing we haven't seen before." Those words would echo in Margaret's mind later, when the world split open and showed its teeth. Frank kissed her cheek, a quick, absent gesture that carried 20 years of marriage in its brevity, and headed for the door. "Pick me up at 6. "Of course," she said, wiping Tommy's face with a dish rag. "Drive careful." The screen door slammed behind him with its familiar squeak, and Margaret watched through the window as he climbed into their 1948 Ford pickup, the engine coughing to life in the morning air. She didn't know it then, but that would be the last normal moment they would ever share. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Mary burst through the front door like a small tornado herself, her school dress rumpled, her blonde braids coming loose from their ribbons. At 8 years old, she had Frank's stubborn chin and Margaret's green eyes, and an energy that seemed to vibrate in the air around her. "Mama, we got to come home early," she announced, dropping her lunchbox on the kitchen counter with a clatter. "Mrs. Patterson said, there's bad weather coming, and all the buses had to get the kids home quick." Margaret looked out the window. The sky had changed while she'd been folding laundry. What had been clear blue that morning was now a patchwork of white and grey clouds, moving faster than seemed natural. But it wasn't unusual for Oklahoma. Spring weather could change faster than a child's mood. "Bad weather, huh?" Margaret said, trying to keep her voice light. "Well, good thing you're home safe then." But Mary was already racing upstairs to change out of her school clothes, her footsteps like drum beats on the wooden stairs. Tommy was napping in his crib, his tiny fist curled around his favorite blanket, the one Margaret's mother had knitted before she died, soft yellow wool with tiny ducks around the border. Margaret stood in her living room, surrounded by the detritus of ordinary life, Frank's work boots by the door, mud still caked on the soles, the radio playing softly from the kitchen, some advertisement for Ovaltine, Mary's school book scattered on the coffee table, the curtains her mother-in-law had made, with the tiny blue flowers that Margaret had never really liked but kept anyway, because what was the point of changing them? She had no way of knowing that in less than 4 hours, none of it would exist anymore. 4:30 p.m. The radio crackled with static, interrupting Arthur Godfrey's afternoon show. Margaret was in the kitchen, peeling potatoes for dinner, when the voice of the local announcer cut through the music. National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm watch for central Oklahoma. Residents are advised to monitor weather conditions closely. Large hail and damaging winds are possible. Margaret paused, the potato peeler still in her hand. Through the window, she could see the sky had taken on a strange greenish tint, the color of an old bruise or the inside of a bottle. The air felt different too, charged with an electricity that made the hair on her arms stand up. Mary appeared in the kitchen doorway, her school dress now replaced with play clothes, blue jeans rolled up to her knees, and one of Frank's old shirts tied at the waist. "Mama, can I go play outside? Jimmy's got a new baseball," and he said no. The word came out sharper than Margaret intended. "No, honey, I think you'd better stay inside today." Something in her mother's tone made Mary pause. "How come?" Margaret forced a smile. "Just the weather's looking a little rough. Why don't you go read in the living room? I'll make some popcorn in a bit." But Mary was 8, and 8-year-olds have a way of sensing when adults are hiding something. She pressed her nose against the kitchen window, looking out at the strange sky. "It's not even raining," she said, "and it's not that dark." But it was getting darker. Minute by minute, degree by degree, the light was leaving the world. 5:45 p.m. Margaret was supposed to leave to pick up Frank from the rig. She'd been ready for 10 minutes, her purse in her hand, car keys jingling nervously between her fingers. But something kept her rooted to the spot by the kitchen window, watching the sky. The clouds were moving wrong. They weren't just drifting across the sky like clouds should. They were rotating, slowly, hypnotically, like water going down a drain. And the silence was all wrong too. No birds singing, no insects buzzing. Even the neighbor's dog, who barked at everything, had gone quiet. What were those 4 missing minutes when everything went silent? The phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped her keys. "Hello? Margie?" It was Frank's voice, but there was something tight in it, something that made her stomach clench. "Listen, I need you to stay home. Don't come get me." "What? Why?" "Frank, what's?" "The foreman's got a radio here, and they're saying—" His voice faded, then came back stronger. "They're saying there might be tornadoes tonight, big ones. I want you and the kids to get in the basement and stay there until I get home." Margaret's mouth went dry. "Tornadoes? Frank, the sky doesn't look that." "Promise me, Margie. Promise me you'll get in the basement." Through the phone line, she could hear the rumble of engines, men's voices shouting over each other. The oil rig was shutting down early. "I promise," she said, though the words felt strange in her mouth. "But how are you going to get home if—" "I'll find a way. I'll walk if I have to. Just promise me you'll keep our babies safe." "Our babies?" Frank only called them that when he was scared. "I promise," she said again, and the line went dead. 6:15 p.m. "Mary, come here, sweetie." Margaret's voice carried a forced cheerfulness as she gathered flashlights from the junk drawer, tested the batteries, counted candles. Tommy was awake now, sitting on the kitchen floor and banging wooden blocks together, oblivious to the growing tension in the air. Mary appeared in the doorway, one sock on, one sock off. "What's wrong with the sky, Mama? It's turning funny colors." Margaret looked out the window and felt her heart skip. The clouds were lower now, pressing down on the world like a heavy blanket. And the color, it wasn't just green anymore. It was gray-green, black-green, the color of something poisonous. "We're going to go down to the basement for a while," Margaret said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Like a game, we'll bring some snacks." And the lights flickered. Then the wind hit. It didn't start gradually like normal wind. It was like someone had thrown a switch, and suddenly the world outside was roaring. The kitchen window rattled in its frame. The screen door slammed open and shut, wob on and shut, with a rhythm that sounded almost like applause. "Mama?" Mary's voice was small now, uncertain. Margaret scooped Tommy up from the floor, his blocks scattering. Basement. Now. They ran, down the narrow wooden steps into the musty darkness below the house, where Frank stored his tools and Margaret kept her canning jars, where spiders built webs in the corners, and the air always smelled of earth and old wood. Margaret's hands shook as she fumbled for the light switch, and when the single bulb flickered on, it illuminated a space that suddenly felt like the only safe place in the world. "Why are we down here?" Mary asked, but before Margaret could answer, the sound started. At first it was just wind, loud wind, louder than Margaret had ever heard, but still recognizably wind. Then it became something else, a roar, a scream, the sound of the world being torn apart at the seams. Above them something crashed, then something else, then a sound like thunder, but thunder that went on and never stopped. "Mama!" Mary screamed, and Margaret pulled her close, one child in each arm, their bodies pressed against hers in the flickering light of the basement bulb. And that's when she understood. This wasn't a storm, This wasn't weather. This was the end of everything. 7:47 p.m. The tornado is directly overhead now. Margaret can feel it in her bones, in the way the basement walls seem to vibrate, in the way the air pressure makes her ears pop. Tommy is crying, but she can barely hear him over the roar. Mary has gone silent, which is somehow worse than the crying. Above them, the house is disintegrating. Margaret can hear it happening piece by piece. The roof first, peeling away like the lid of a tin can. Then the walls, splintering and cracking, the sound like bones breaking. The kitchen where she made breakfast that morning. The living room where Frank read his paper. Mary's bedroom with its careful collection of dolls. All of it being sucked up into the hungry mouth of the storm. The light bulb swings wildly on its cord, casting crazy shadows on the walls. Margaret's mind, desperate for something to hold on to, fixes on details. The spider web in the corner, somehow still intact. The smell of Tommy's baby powder mixing with the earthy scent of the basement. The feeling of Mary's small hand gripping hers so tightly she's sure it will leave bruises. This is what the end of the world sounds like, she thinks. Not a bang or a whimper, but a roar that never stops. Then suddenly it does stop. The silence is almost as terrifying as the noise was. Margaret's ears ring in the absence of sound. She can hear her own breathing, ragged and too fast. Tommy's hiccuping sobs. The drip of water from somewhere in the darkness. Is it over? Mary whispers. Margaret doesn't answer because she doesn't know. She's heard stories about tornadoes, how they can circle back, how there can be more than one. Instead, she counts her heartbeats in the silence. 1, 2, 3, and wills herself to stay calm for her children. But where is Frank? And then in the silence, Margaret hears something that will haunt her for the rest of her life. 4 minutes of absolute quiet, where even the wind stopped breathing. 4 minutes where the world held its breath and waited to see if it would survive. 4 minutes that she never spoke of again, not even to Frank, because some silences are too sacred to break with words. In those 4 minutes, she understood something about survival that changed her forever. 8:30 p.m. When they finally climb out of the basement, it's into a world that no longer exists. Where their house once stood, there's nothing but the foundation and scattered debris. The kitchen table sits impossibly upright in what used to be the backyard, still set with that morning's breakfast dishes, not a plate cracked, but everything else, the walls, the roof, the furniture, 20 years of accumulated life is gone, vanished, redistributed across several counties by the wind. The sky is clear now, impossibly clear, with stars already beginning to show in the deepening twilight. It's as if the tornado was never here at all, as if it was all a terrible dream. But the evidence is all around them, houses reduced to splinters, cars flipped upside down and wrapped around trees, the Methodist church's steeple lying on its side in what used to be Mrs. Henderson's rose garden. Mary stands in the ruins of her bedroom, holding something small in her hands. Margaret moves closer and sees it's a photograph, the one of Mary's second-grade class, taken just last month. The glass is cracked, but all the faces are still there, still smiling. "Look, Mama," Mary says, her voice wondering. "It saved this." Margaret wants to cry, but there's no time for crying. Not yet. First she has to find Frank. But Frank finds them. He comes running across the debris field that used to be their neighborhood, still in his work clothes, his face streaked with mud and something that might be blood. When he sees them alive, whole, standing in the ruins of everything they owned, he falls to his knees in what used to be their driveway. "I thought," he starts, then stops. Unable to finish the sentence, Margaret runs to him, Tommy still in her arms, Mary close behind. They collapse together in a heap of relief and tears and thank yous, whispered to a God who, for reasons they'll never understand, decided to spare them. But the hardest part comes after. In a 1973 interview with the More Historical Society, Mary Patterson Coleman would say, "Mama never talked about those 4 minutes when everything went quiet. But sometimes I'd catch her standing at kitchen windows during storms, just listening, like she was waiting for something only she could hear." 3 days later, they're living in the high school gymnasium now, along with 47 other families who lost everything in what the newspapers are calling the Moore tornado of 1955. Cots arranged in neat rows, Red Cross volunteers serving coffee and sandwiches, children playing games with donated toys in the corners. Margaret sits on the edge of their cot, their temporary bed, their temporary everything, and watches Mary trying to teach Tommy to play with a stuffed rabbit someone donated. It's nothing like Whiskers, who they never found, but Tommy seems to like it well enough. Frank is outside with the other men, talking to insurance adjusters and government officials, trying to figure out how you rebuild a life from nothing. The house can be replaced, they keep saying. The furniture, the clothes, the dishes, all of it can be replaced. But what about the things that can't be replaced? Margaret thinks about the letters Frank wrote her during the war, tied with a blue ribbon and kept in her jewelry box. Gone. The baby shoes she saved from when Mary and Tommy were born. Gone. The recipe for her mother's apple pie, written in her mother's careful handwriting. Gone. 20 years of marriage, reduced to what they could carry out of a basement. A Red Cross volunteer approaches, a kind-faced woman named Eleanor, who's been checking on all the families. "How are you holding up, Mrs. Patterson?" Margaret wants to say that she's fine, that they're all fine, that they're grateful to be alive. And all of that is true. But there's something else too, something she can't quite put into words. "I keep thinking about the strangest things," she says finally, "like how I was worried about whether the pot roast would be ready in time for dinner, or how I was going to have to remind Mary to practice her piano lessons." She laughs, but it sounds hollow even to her own ears. Seems silly now, doesn't it? Eleanor sits down beside her on the cot. "It doesn't seem silly at all," she says. "Those are the things that make up a life. Of course you miss them. But that's not quite right either." Margaret watches Mary and Tommy playing, and she realizes what she's really mourning. It's not the house or the furniture, or even the irreplaceable mementos. It's the certainty, the belief that tomorrow would be like yesterday, that the world was a predictable place where mothers made pot roast and children practiced piano and husbands came home for dinner. That certainty is gone now, blown away with everything else. 1 week later, Frank has found them a small rental house on the other side of town. It's nothing like their old place, smaller, older, with creaky floorboards and wallpaper that's seen better days. But it has 3 bedrooms and a kitchen, and most importantly, a basement. Margaret stands in the empty living room, holding a box of donated clothes, and tries to imagine making this place home. The Red Cross has been generous. People from all over Oklahoma have sent clothes and household items, things to help them start over. There's a kindness in it that almost breaks her heart. Mary runs in from exploring the backyard, her face bright with discovery. "Mama, there's a swing set and a sandbox. Can we keep it?" "I'm sure we can, sweetheart," Margaret says, and Mary runs back outside, already calling for Tommy to come see. Frank appears in the doorway, carrying another box from the car. "The insurance adjuster called," he says. "They're going to cover most of it. We can rebuild on the old lot if we want to." Margaret nods, but something inside her recoils at the thought. Return to that place where the ground is still littered with splinters of their old life, where she'll always be waiting for the sky to turn green again. "Maybe," she says, "maybe we will," but she knows they won't. 2 years later, April 9th, 1957. Margaret stands at the kitchen window of their rental house, which has become somehow simply their house, and watches the sky. It's been 2 years to the day, and every spring since, she's found herself holding her breath when clouds gather on the horizon. Mary is 10 now, tall for her age, with new gaps in her teeth, and an independence that sometimes takes Margaret by surprise. She's learned not to ask about the tornado anymore, though Margaret sometimes catches her staring at the sky with the same weariness Margaret feels. Tommy is 4, and he has no memory of that night at all. Sometimes Margaret thinks this is a blessing. Sometimes it feels like another small loss. Frank comes up behind her, slides his arms around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts," he says. She leans back against his chest, solid and warm and alive, just watching the weather. "It's a beautiful day," he says, and he's right. The sky is blue and clear, the kind of spring day that makes you believe in fresh starts and new beginnings. But Margaret knows better now. She knows that beautiful days can turn violent in minutes. She knows that the things you think are permanent, your house, your neighborhood, your certainty about tomorrow, can be taken away faster than you can say goodbye. She knows that survival sometimes looks like a family huddled in a basement, holding on to each other in the darkness. But she also knows something else. She knows that love endures, even when everything else is torn away. She knows that people are capable of extraordinary kindness, that strangers will give you clothes and food and shelter when you have nothing left to give in return. She knows that children are more resilient than you think, that they can learn to play in the ruins and find beauty in the broken places. And she knows that sometimes, somehow, we survive. Mary bursts through the back door, grass stains on her knees, her hair tangled from playing outside. Tommy follows behind her, clutching the stuffed rabbit that has become his most treasured possession. "Mama, can we have a picnic in the backyard?" Mary asks. "Please, it's such a nice day." Margaret looks out at the sky one more time, blue and clear and innocent, then down at her children's expectant faces. Frank squeezes her hand. "I think that sounds like a wonderful idea," she says, and for the first time in 2 years she means it. But sometimes, late at night when the wind picks up and the house creaks in ways that make her heart race, Margaret still thinks about those 4 missing minutes. She never told Frank what happened in that perfect silence. How in those 4 minutes, when even the tornado seemed to pause, she heard something impossible, her mother's voice, singing the lullaby she used to sing when Margaret was small, clear as a bell in the basement darkness, telling her everything would be all right. She never told him how the light, that single basement bulb, seemed to glow brighter in those 4 minutes, as if someone had turned up the brightness just for them. How the fear left her completely, replaced by a certainty that they would survive this, that love was stronger than the wind. Those 4 minutes when the world went silent were not about terror, they were about grace, about a mother's voice reaching across death to comfort her daughter, about light holding steady in the darkness, about the moment when Margaret understood that some things, love, hope, the bonds that tie families together, cannot be torn away, no matter how fierce the storm. That's why she never spoke of them. Some miracles are too sacred for words. And when she wakes from her dreams of that basement, she reaches for Frank's hand in the darkness, grateful for the solid warmth of him beside her, grateful for the ordinary miracle of another morning, another chance to watch her children grow up in a world that is beautiful and terrible and utterly unpredictable. This is what surviving looks like. It looks like a family sitting down to breakfast in a house that isn't quite home but is home enough. It looks like a mother learning to trust the sky again, one blue day at a time. It looks like children who can still laugh and play and believe in tomorrow, despite everything they've seen. It looks like love, stubborn and persistent and stronger than the wind. And it looks like light, that single basement bulb that never went out, that still glows in Margaret's memory, steady and sure and bright enough to last a lifetime.